Okay, so it is time for my next review. Today we are reviewing the third book in the Vampire Academy series, Shadow Kiss by Rochelle Mead. I was going to wait to do this tomorrow, but I've just finished it and I have thoughts, you guys, so I need to get them down here in this review and discuss them with you rather than waiting 24 hours and then forgetting certain things that have happened and all that kind of stuff. And we already have flickering going on in the camera because why not? If you have not seen my reviews before, I split them up into two sections. The first part is spoiler free, where I give you 3 pros and 3 cons, although we're going to struggle with this one. I'll tell you why in a moment. Then we go into the spoiler version where I have a lot to say, so I'm going to get through the spoiler-free version incredibly quickly. So if you've not read this book and you want to know if you should, let me give you a couple of reasons why you should or why you shouldn't, depending upon, well, what I say here. So the first con for this book is that there is a tiny little bit of a lull that occurs around 3/4 of the way through, but it is incredibly quick. I think it lasts for about 3 or 4 pages, but that's it. It really doesn't last that long at all. Excuse me. That's my first con. My second con is that the protagonist of this series, and it's been pretty much the same way for book 1, book 2, and again in book 3, continues to make some really terrible decisions, and she even makes a terrible decision towards the end, which is going to lead us into book 4. And as much as I really can't wait to read book 4, I just wish she hadn't made that decision because, yeah, I just don't think she should have made that decision, but we can discuss that in the spoiler section. But that's all I have on cons, and I had to think really hard about that because, you guys, I gave the first book in this series, Vampire Academy, 3 stars, the second book in this series, Frostbite, 3 stars, but I'm giving the third book in this series, Shadow Kiss, 5 stars, because this book is the best book in the entire series. Now, just because it's the best book does not mean it deserves 5 stars just for being the best book, but it is so good, you guys. If you want to see all of my spoiler-free pros, check out my review on Goodreads, because I think I did about 7 pros, and I'm going to try and stick to 3 so I can get into the spoiler version. My first pro of this book, if you're wondering whether or not you should read it, well, it's book 3, so I'm assuming if you're considering whether or not to read this, you don't want to know things that I could tell you about book 1 and 2, like Rochelle Mead has really easy writing style to read. You already know that because I'm assuming you've already read book 1 and 2. So specific to book 3, my first pro is that the Guardian training at the Vampire Academy goes up to another level. I don't consider this to be a spoiler because it's not a massive deal, and I also feel like this is something that you would assume anyway. So in the first 2 books, Rose goes through training, she does some classes and things like that progressively get harder, and she learns more from the start of book 1 all the way through to the end of book 2. In book 3, the Guardians actually have to protect their Morois that they are placed, Guardians, the word that I don't like to say, the Dampers, the Dampiers, the Dampires, those ones. They are given a Moroi, a charge to look after, and the teachers play the role of Strigoi, and that just made it really interesting because we're not sauntering from class to class and dealing with mundane things. Every time a Dampier is walking around the school, they're walking around the school looking for a teacher dressed in black who might attack at any moment, and it just makes it really, really intriguing. The second thing that I want to talk about is Rose. Again, I'm assuming you've read book 1 and book 2 because this is book 3. Rose and Demetri's relationship goes to the next level, and yeah, that is done really, really well. The third pro that I want to talk to you about is that the ending of this book, the climax, was really well done. Everything in this book was just really well done. But the climax of this book was really well done because it had all the feels that you can imagine. with some really massive things that do occur along the way. I do not want to give everything away, but there is a moment in this book during the climax where I felt my heart stop for a second. I was like, what? So, yeah. It's good. It's good. Rochelle Mead has hit her stride in this book, and so I can only hope that it's going to get better in book 4. But I definitely recommend that if you've made it this far, if you've read book 1 and you've read book 2 and you're umming and ahhing about book 3, read book 3. First of all, you got nothing to lose, but secondly, it is the best book out of the 3. So you want to read this book. I'm sorry, normally I try and be impartial about this, but you want to read this book. It's the best one. It really is. There's no real meandering parts in it at all. It's pretty action-packed all the way through. There's a lot that is revealed in this book. It's just really, really, really good. But I'm going to stop here because I need to talk spoilers. So I'm going to leave that there. If you're not joining me for the spoiler version, I completely understand. I post videos every Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. And I will speak to you again soon. And happy reading. For those of you who are joining me for the spoiler version, we'll be right back. So many things to say. Please don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay. Spoiler version, spoiler. Okay, you've been warned enough. We're going into the spoiler version. I'm just going to hit the ground running. Okay, there is a lot to say when it comes to the plot of this book because so much happens. So I'm just going to pull out some highlights and discuss them. Starting off with the fact that Rose and the other Dampiers are now going to be protecting the charges that are chosen for them, we'll get to that in a moment, against the teachers who, when they dress all in black, are going to be Strigoi. I loved the idea for this when I was reading, when they're in the assembly and they're being told that this is going to happen and that they're being matched up with who they're going to get. And even earlier when Rose is talking about the fact that she has no more classes and this is going to happen, I was so excited. I thought, yay, we're not going to classes, we're not going to have any boring moments, this is going to be amazing, and it did not disappoint. Rose eventually gets given Christian instead of Lissa. Now, if you've read book 1 and 2, that is major. And of course, Rose, in true Rose Hathaway style, reacts to this. I expected it, and I appreciated the fact that she reacted to the fact she didn't get Lissa. But one thing I didn't understand, which someone tried to explain to her, I think it was Lissa, but I thought it right away, was out of anyone you could have gotten if you didn't get Lissa, isn't Christian the next best bet? Because they're always with each other anyway, so you'll still get to see Lissa anyway. Like, if she was given someone completely different, fine. But she was given Lissa's boyfriend by happenstance. Like, I don't see how that's a horrible thing. But anyway, so Rose and Christian, start their guardian / charge relationship, and that seems to go okay. They end up talking out any and all issues that they have and finally start to trust each other, which is really beautiful. The platonic relationship between Rose and Christian really develops and grows throughout this book, and I really appreciate that. Where book 2 left off, they were doing well because of everything that happened in Spokane, but in book 3, it's even better. It just, goes to better heights, as you may know if you've already read the book. Anyway, so what else? Okay, Rose is seeing the ghost of Mason. So if you remember in book 2, Mason does die, and Rose is feeling really guilty about it, but she keeps seeing him. One thing I didn't like about this, I have no problem with the fact that she's seeing him. In fact, I think it made the book even more intriguing. It made the book even more intriguing that she's seeing Mason. What I did not like about it was that her teachers kept calling her crazy. I did not like that emotionally. I think it's fine that Rochelle Mead wrote it from a logical perspective. I guess we need to see the opposing side, but emotionally, I just didn't appreciate it. Rose has been through so much. Why would she lie about this? And especially with Demetri not believing her to begin with, that I didn't appreciate that. I love the fact that she could see Mason, but one thing that annoyed me was we work out pretty early on that Mason either can't or won't talk to her. He can basically only make gestures to her. Why didn't they work out a system? Seriously. Like, I would say, okay, hold up one finger for yes or two for no, or blink once for yes or blink twice for no, or hold up a number to represent a letter, well, or something, I don't know. Like, if it's A, B, C, you could go A, B, C, or even try and learn American Sign Language. A, wow, I don't remember B, B, C, D, E, yeah, I did know it. I think that's F. Oh gosh, I did know it. There was a time, trust me. G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Anyway, I could go on. Something so that you could decodify what he's clearly trying to say to you that you just can't verbalize. So that annoyed me just a little bit, but I really appreciate that she could see him. Really, what else can I talk about? Okay, they go and see the fortune teller. This was really interesting. One thing that I don't talk about at all on this channel is that I have done tarot readings before. By that I do mean, yes, I have had someone read tarot to me, but I've also read tarot fortunes for others. So when the cards came up in this book, I already knew what they typically mean. Obviously, well, okay, there's a whole lot more to tarot than just what the card typically means, but I knew what it typically meant, and I thought, oh, this is go good one, oh, roses go bad one, you know? And when Demetri got his reading, I thought, you know, this means something. And I have read this book, but I read it so long ago that honestly I did not remember what his reading could mean. I didn't even remember him having the reading, but I straight away thought, this means something. You're going to lose what you hold most valuable. I knew this meant something. And I was hanging out through the rest of the book trying to work out what's it going to be. They end up going to the royal court because Viktor Dashkov is finally going through his hearing, which Rose, I think, reacted the right way. I would have reacted the same way. What? He hasn't even been tried yet? What the hell are they doing? And I completely agree. Yeah, don't know if I so much appreciated the hearing as much as just being in the court. Get a load of Queen Tatiana, though. Queen Tatiana takes a moment to talk to Rose. Okay, we'll go back. Queen Tatiana talks to Lissa, and she tells Lissa that she wants Lissa to stay at the court and do some studies there, and then she can get her into this school, I think called Lehigh or something like that. And Lissa wants to go to another school, but it may not be well protected by other guardians, but because the Queen wants her so much, the Queen will see what she can do. Anyway, we don't really see the real reason why the Queen wants Lissa to be at court once she graduates until she speaks to Rose, and she says to Rose, well, I want you to know, not these words, but pretty much, I want you to know that I'm not happy that you and Adrian, my nephew, who Adrian Ivashkov is another character in this book that I love, and he is her nephew. I'm not happy that you and Adrian are together, and you may think that you're going to marry him, but you are not. To which, of course, Rose is thinking all these thoughts like, what is she on about? I'm not with Adrian. If anything, Adrian likes me, which is true. We've seen this in Frostbite, and we also saw it in this book as well. Adrian likes Rose. Rose is not reciprocating that love at all. She loves Demetri, so anyway. But the Queen has it in her mind that Rose and Adrian are together and plan on getting married, and yet the Queen says to Rose, but what's going to happen is that Lissa is going to marry Adrian, so don't you try and take Adrian away from Lissa, which is even more weird because Lissa's with Christian. This Queen has no idea. Let's move on. So anyway, they get into the plane to go back to the school because they have to fly to the court and fly back, but they can't stop at the airport area near where the school is because there's too much snow, so they stop somewhere else outside of the school, and there's a plot reason for this. Ghosts appear to Rose. Now, they can't appear to her when she's at the school because of the wards being up, but no wards being there, and voila, all these ghosts come to her. Vasilissa's family, who are all dead. She's the only surviving Dragomir, and others, and Mason, and all this kind of stuff. So that was pretty interesting. But then starts the whole thing of, well, Rose is crazy. Rose is suffering PTSD, and that's why she's seeing ghosts and da-da-da-da. Excuse me. Then Rose ends up going off for counselling, which again, she doesn't need, and again is something that I have studied. I have a degree in counselling, and so I understood Rose's perspective when she was talking about the counsellor who kept answering Rose's questions with questions of her own. Yeah, it's kind of what they do. Anyway, so that was kind of annoying, but I'm going to skip by all that and get to the end. So Rose is with Demetri and they're going for a walk. The next thing you know, they end up in a cabin and... Oh, okay, hold on. Rose and Lissa and Christian and Adrian are going to go to a party, but by the time Rose gets to the party, it seems that Lissa, Adrian and Christian have arrived. Lissa's nowhere to be seen, and Adrian and Christian are having this massive argument about how Christian is jealous because Lissa is spending time with Adrian, but the only reason she's spending time with Adrian is because they both have the elemental magical ability of spirit, where Adrian excuse me, has the magical ability of fire. Rose has tried to explain many times to Christian that Adrian's not into Lissa at all. If anything, he's into me, into Rose. And I guess Christian's just not believing that, so they have this big verbal argument, crazy argument, and eventually Rose says to Adrian, you need to compel him to calm down and listen to what you're saying. To which he does, and then they have a rational discussion about what's going on. Meanwhile, Rose turns around and goes, well, where is Lissa? Like, where's she gone? Did she run off or whatever? Now, as you would know from reading book 1 and book 2, Rose and Lissa are connected. So Rose checks through the connection to see where Lissa is. Lissa is being held captive by this group of Moroi who are trying to bring about a secret organization at the school, which apparently exists in all vampire schools, where Moroi, who think they're above everyone else, get together in a secret society to try and maintain things going that way. They've tried to recruit Christian, but he doesn't want to have any part of it. Adrian definitely doesn't want to have any part of it. And they corner Lissa one day while she's with her guardian, who I forgot to say is actually Eddie, Mason's best friend. And they ask her to join. She politely declines. But on this particular day, Lissa is being held captive by them. They are physically assaulting her. And every time she tries to tell them to stop, they are basically saying to her, make us, make us. In other words, they're trying to force her to use compulsion. One of the things that they want to learn with the secret society is how to wield compulsion in a really strong, effective way or something like that. Lissa doesn't want to have a part of it. But anyway, Rose eventually arrives with Eddie and with Adrian and with Christian, and they break up the fight. But the next thing you know, Lissa has used her spirit abilities to set spiders upon one of the boys, and Rose feels a darkness within Lissa. It's described as usually when Lissa uses magic, Rose feels this golden, beautiful thing within their bond that they share, but in this moment she feels nothing but darkness, and she remembers doing the research from Vladimir and Anna, the two who were also bonded in the same way that she is with Lissa, that Anna was assisting Vladimir, and what ends up being worked out is that she assisted him by taking his darkness away, and Rose realizes that she can do that as well, so she tells Lissa to give her the darkness, which I still don't really understand how the darkness is given. I think it's more just that Lissa looks into Rose's eyes and Rose just accepts the darkness. It's not that well explained. But anyway, Rose ends up going off and becoming very tribal. Well, tribal is probably the wrong word, but she just becomes very aggressive, very animalistic, and it takes Demetri taking her out into a cabin and calming her down to stop her from becoming as aggressive as she is, and getting rid of the darkness, or as much as he can to put it at bay for as long as possible. And eventually the two of them end up getting rather hot and heavy, and they do it for the first time. So, and Rose is very happy once it's done because she was virgin prior to that, and she's explaining how she's very happy that she did it with Demetri and that it happened at the moment that it did because it was never felt right any other time. Once they're done and they're talking, Mason appears, which, way to break up the party, but Mason appears with a warning, and that warning is that Strigoi are coming. So Rose and Demetri end up fighting Demetri starts fighting a Strigoi and tells Rose to run and go and get the other Guardians, and the next thing we know, somehow the Strigoi have broken the wards of the school and they have come in and they are attacking left, right and centre, and Rose tries to help her fellow students by protecting them, but then she realizes that she hasn't seen Christian for a while, so she goes off to find him. She does find him, and Christian says to her, well, we could just go and, find some safe place to go, but hey, if I use my fire abilities and you use your ability to be able to, stab or stake the Strigoi, we could be a formidable team. So they go over to the elementary school because there's an elementary school nearby, and they fight many Strigoi, and they do really, really well with this. Ultimately, however, what does end up happening is that we don't see this, but we're explained it afterwards in the aftermath. A number of the Guardians and students have been dragged off by the Strigoi to some other area, and they're being held captive. So Rose comes up with the idea to get outside of the wards and talk to Mason and see if Mason knows where they have been taken to, because one of the people in the group that have been taken away by the Strigoi includes Eddie. So she asks Mason to come to her and says, look, do you know where they are? Unfortunately, they find a way to get hold of a map, which is a really good idea when you can't talk, saying, here's a map, show me on the map where they are. And then Mason just has to point and go, oh, look, they went here, here, here. I mean, it took 300 pages to get there. There are more forms of communication than verbal, Rose. But anyway, moving on. So they end up finding out that there is a cave nearby the school, and they basically go in and try and rescue everyone, and that's good. And Eddie ends up not getting out the first time, but he does get out the second time or something like that. Eddie's fine. There was a scare that Eddie wouldn't have survived, but he did survive. Here's what we need to talk about, though. Demetri. Now, Demetri was fine for the majority of the time. In fact, when they go to take on the Strigoi, a number of the novices, the Dampiers who are training, are able to come and help the actual Guardians, and Demetri goes into the cave, but the Dampiers have to stand around the cave in like a circle to guard. Just in case any Strigoi does come out, they'll take care of them. And we're waiting to see what's happening, and well, not really lots happening. Then finally some survivors are coming out, and that's great, but still no Demetri. At one point, Rose is instructed to go into the cave just to see what's going on, and she and some other Guardians end up battling a ton of Strigoi and killing a ton of Strigoi, so much so that by the end of the whole battle in this book, they don't even know how many Strigois each Guardian or Novice or Dampier has killed. So they just kill a ton of Strigoi. I mean, it's really badass. Really good. Anyway, so they're all now starting to get out of the cave because they've dealt with all the Strigoi. And Rose gets out, as does a teacher and another teacher. And then when they look back, there's this certain amount of Strigoi that's near the end of the cave that had let Rose and the two teachers go past, but didn't let the last three members go past. And to cut a long story short, one of the Strigoi ends up being able to grab Demetri. Demetri is so good that really Rose has it in her head that that Strigoi are never going to be able to capture Demetri, but they do on this one occasion. So it just takes one time, right? Imagine if Rose ends up being pregnant. I tell you why she does, considering they had sex one time, but anyway. So, yeah, Demetri is captured by a Strigoi, and the Strigoi bites him, and then he's pulled back into the cave and everyone has to run because the sun's about to go down, and the only reason that Strigoi are in the cave is because they can't be outside in the sun. And I don't understand this, honestly. If it's in the book, I missed it completely. But the Strigoi can't be out in the sun, but the Dampires and the Morroys and the Guardians can. It's just a bit confusing for me, but that's fine, I'll go with it. So the ones who are outside all go back to the school. Rose doesn't want to move, but eventually she does, and we're just waiting until the next time that the sun comes up to go back and see if there's anyone still in the cave. And so they go and do that, and the next day when they're bringing everyone back, there are a few students who have died. Rose talks to her mum, who is there at that point, and says to her, where she's carrying someone who has died on a stretcher past her, Rose says to her mum, "Where's Demetri? What's going on?" And Rose's mum says to her, "Look, I'm sorry, but Demetri wasn't there. Neither was this girl called Molly." Really? What a random name. Molly wasn't there either. Okay, well, that's nice for Molly, but what about Demetri? But anyway, so Demetri's not there. So one more time, Rose goes past the wards, calls Mason to her and says, "Mason, is Demetri alive?" And Mason nods his head and goes, "Yes, he is." And Rose says, "Okay. Is he still a guardian?" or something like that. "No." And you know what this means, but she asks the question eventually because it takes her a moment to go, "Oh, have to be strong to ask this question. Is he a Strigoi?" And Mason eventually nods. Yeah, he's a Strigoi. So now Rose has to go and find him and kill him, because this is what I was talking about. Rose makes some terrible decisions along the way. She's now decided that it's on her to go and kill the love of her life. Lissa assumed, as is said right in the last couple of pages, Lissa confronts Rose and says, which Lissa's rather petulant towards the end. I couldn't believe it. Lissa's like, "Oh, you love him more than you love me, and you should stay for me," and da da da. Bless Rose for finally having a backbone and saying to Lissa, "You know what? I always protect you, but I need to do this. You know, if you can't understand that," like, finally, because this mantra of "they come first" has been so drilled into these novices, these Dampiers, that yeah, it's just good to see Rose finally stand up to Lissa and say, "You know what? I need to do this, and why are you trying to guilt trip me?" But anyway, so now she's going to go off and try and kill Demetri, because Demetri is a Strigoi, and what Vasilisa guessed was that at one point when Vasilisa was with others as well as Demetri and Rose, they were all travelling somewhere. Apparently both Rose and Demetri agreed that if ever they became Strigoi, they would want to be killed. They wouldn't want to live on being a Strigoi. So now Rose has taken it upon herself to be the one to have to kill Demetri. So Rose has to go on a quest, and I'm not a quest fan, but anyway, I love fantasy books. I just don't like questing. But anyway, but this book, all in all, was just so good from start to finish. Just when I thought things might calm down a little bit, bam, there was another thing that just came way out of left center, and it was just an incredible journey. Oh my god, like, I went into this book fully expecting it to follow the same pattern of the first two books, being that it would have the first three quarters of this book be so meandering and so boring, and no, it was action-packed from page 1 all the way through to the end. Just amazing. 5-star book. This is my very first 5-star Vampire Academy book, and I'm so glad that I got this cover, because in my April TBR I have the cover that I don't like, and so yay, very excited about that. So this was my review on the third book in the Vampire Academy series, Shadow Kiss by Rochelle Mead, that I've given 5 stars to. Really appreciated it, and I think if you have read the first 2 books, definitely read the third one, because it is absolutely worth your time, and it is so much better. So much better. 2 whole stars better than the first 2. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Letting you guys go peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Monday, Thursday, and Sunday with reviews somewhere in between. And I'll see you next time. Mwah. Thank you for watching and happy reading. Bye guys. Bye.